The intuitive introvert, by nature, walks the edges of society. He watches, he listens, he senses currents beneath the surface that others are blind to. His inner world is vivid, rich, and often more compelling than the chaos of the outside. In solitude, he draws meaning, deciphers hidden patterns, and imagines outcomes long before they arrive. But herein lies the first and most silent danger. When left unchecked, this retreat into isolation becomes a trap, a quiet, velvet prison that wraps itself around the mind like a comforting noose. You begin to convince yourself that seeing is enough, that understanding intentions from a distance grants you immunity from their consequences. You start to believe you are above the game because you've mapped it out in your head. You assume that knowledge alone protects you. But it doesn't. The world punishes those who observe without intervening. It mocks those who analyze without action. And while you're buried in thought, the bolder, more ruthless, less perceptive men take what they want without hesitation. They move the pieces while you're still calculating the next 3 moves. Introversion, especially when paired with intuition, can seduce a man into overvaluing his internal clarity while neglecting the importance of external control. You sit in your room, you journal, you think, and you know. Yes, you know. You see people's hypocrisy, the false smiles, the hidden agendas, the manipulation cloaked in politeness. You're not wrong, you're just useless if you do nothing about it. The mind, sharpened in isolation, becomes delusional when it no longer tests itself against resistance. Theory without engagement is fantasy, and fantasy, when mistaken for power, becomes your enemy. The more isolated you become, the more your mind becomes a chamber of echoes. Your ideas bounce back to you uncontested, your fears deepen without being disproved, and your plans rot before they are ever acted upon. The intuitive introvert imagines he is being strategic when he is merely being absent. He sees the threats and avoids them. He sees the traps and walks the other way. He avoids conflict, he avoids embarrassment, he avoids risk, and he avoids power. For all his insight, he influences nothing. The world is a contest of will, not a contest of who perceives the most. Your insights, no matter how accurate, hold no value unless they are imposed. To impose requires confrontation, and confrontation requires presence. Not physical presence alone, but psychic presence, a force of intent that bends others to accommodate your reality. The one who isolates and intellectualizes may feel superior in thought, but he has no weight in the world. He is a feather watching storms from the sky, never realizing that his altitude is not power, but irrelevance. Those who rule the world are rarely the most perceptive. They are the most willing to engage. They make errors, yes. They blunder, but they correct in motion. They swing, miss, adapt, and strike again. Meanwhile, the intuitive introvert perfects his theory and dies with it still untested. A man who only understands but does not act is no different from the man who neither understands nor acts. Both are spectators. One is blind, the other self-blinded. To retreat is sometimes necessary. Every predator rests, recalibrates, watches from the shadows. But there is a difference between the crouch of the hunter and the retreat of the fearful. If your isolation is not tied to preparation, if your insight is not feeding a campaign, then you are not thinking, you are hiding. You must ask yourself, each time you withdraw, is this the silence before the strike, or is this the silence of surrender? Because the world does not wait for your readiness, it moves forward, and if you are not moving with it, then it moves against you. Sensitivity is a rare gift, but one that carries a blade hidden within it. To feel deeply, to intuit the unseen, to sense the subtle fluctuations in tone, gesture, and energy. These are abilities that, when honed, can give a man enormous power. He sees the lie before it is spoken. He detects betrayal before it manifests. He perceives weakness, insecurity, hidden motives, and unspoken fears. But sensitivity, when untrained and unguarded, becomes a liability. It becomes a shield, a justification for passivity, and a soft excuse to avoid the harshness of necessary conflict. The intuitive introvert often mistakes his depth of feeling for strength. He believes that because he understands others, he is somehow beyond them. But knowing the storm is coming is not the same as building the fortress. Feeling the wound of betrayal coming does not prevent the blade from entering your back. Many sensitive men drown not because they lack awareness, but because they refuse to act with the cruelty required to survive in a world that is not designed for softness. They choose to feel rather than to move. They suffer rather than assert. They witness rather than intervene. There is an illusion in being perceptive. The illusion that understanding emotion is equivalent to commanding it. But emotion does not submit to understanding. It respects only control. If you do not learn to wield your sensitivity as a weapon, others will use it against you. They will see your compassion as weakness, your hesitation as uncertainty, your empathy as an opening. The world, for all its masks and rituals, still runs on the law of strength. The one who shows his inner life without protection becomes meat for wolves. You must remember, your ability to read people does not grant you immunity from them. In fact, it makes you more vulnerable if you are not prepared. Because you not only see what others are, you also imagine what they could be. And in that imagination, you become blind to their reality. You excuse behavior, you make allowances, you think they didn't mean it like that, when in truth they did. You think your depth of feeling will inspire them to change, but all it does is assure them that you will not resist. They push you and you yield. They take from you and you rationalize it. You endure too much because you think endurance is nobility, but endurance without boundaries is submission. Sensitivity must be married to ruthlessness, not cruelty for its own sake, but a disciplined, cold awareness that protects your inner life with outer command. You must be gentle with those who have earned it, and dangerous to those who presume upon it. Otherwise, you live in constant reaction to the world. You are pushed and pulled by emotional winds, interpreting every expression, every word, every silence, until your mind becomes a battlefield of overanalysis and emotional fatigue. You end up living in defense, never offense. You anticipate every slight but deliver no consequences. You survive but you do not rule. You exist but you do not shape. Power does not fear sensitivity, it consumes it. Power seeks it out, studies it, and learns how to manipulate it. The smiling liar, the charming deceiver, the flattering enemy, they all thrive off men who feel too much and do too little. If you do not armor your sensitivity with discipline and strategy, then every insight you possess becomes ammunition in the hands of your adversary. They will use your empathy to gain trust, your understanding to avoid punishment, and your emotional connection to lower your guard. And when the moment comes, they will take everything you failed to protect. Silence is often misunderstood by the intuitive introvert. It is worn like a cloak, assumed to be neutral, passive, invisible. But in the eyes of the world, silence is never empty. It speaks volumes. It is interpreted, judged, weaponized, and misunderstood all at once. You may think your silence protects you from scrutiny, that by saying nothing, you reveal nothing. But human nature is not that generous. When you withhold speech, others fill in the void with their own projections. They do not see restraint, they see arrogance, weakness, or hidden threat. Silence makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to guess, and guesses are rarely in your favor. The man who does not speak is not forgotten, he is feared, or worse, dismissed. If your silence is not deliberate, it is dangerous, because the world does not know your intentions. And in the absence of clarity, people will assume the worst. They will invent motives, construct enemies, assign guilt. A quiet man becomes a mirror for others' insecurities, and sooner or later, those insecurities turn into accusations. The one who is always watching, always listening, but never reacting, becomes a threat simply because he is unreadable. In this world, unreadable is unforgivable. To be silent is not to be safe. It is to be judged by a different standard. People respect what they can understand, even if they don't agree with it. But what they cannot read, they learn to resent. The quiet man must therefore master the art of intentional silence, not the silence of fear, hesitation, or avoidance, but the silence that exerts control. A pause that commands attention, a withheld word that shifts the balance of power. You cannot hide in silence, you must wield it. Make others wonder because you chose not to speak, not because you feared to speak. Make your silence feel like dominance, not absence. Those who misunderstand this live their lives on the fringe of influence. They think their quietness gives them mystery, when in reality, it gives them irrelevance. They walk into rooms and speak too little, not as a tactic, but as a habit. They assume others will see their depth, their intelligence, their insights, but no one sees what is not shown. Your silence must have weight behind it. If you say little, ensure that the little you say alters the mood, the thought, the decisions of those listening. Otherwise, you are simply another shadow in a world of noise. Do not be fooled into thinking you are playing chess when others don't even know you're on the board. To play the game, you must be perceived. You must leave an imprint. Those who speak too much reveal their weakness. Yes, but those who speak too little often reveal nothing at all, and thus are treated as if they do not exist. Influence does not come from knowledge alone, but from presence, and silence, if not carefully calibrated, subtracts from your presence. You disappear in plain sight. The intuitive introvert often confuses restraint with wisdom. But wisdom lies in knowing when to speak and when not to, not in avoiding speech altogether. A wise man does not fear being misunderstood. He ensures he is interpreted correctly, even through silence. He knows when a single word, well placed, can cause doubt, fear, or admiration. He knows when to let others speak themselves into exposure and when to intervene with precision. He is not passive, he is selective. That is the difference between power and avoidance. One leads the conversation with silence. The other disappears inside it. You must understand that in every silence, a narrative is forming. If you do not author it, someone else will. If you do not command your silence, it will betray you. It will tell stories you never meant to tell. It will cast shadows where there should have been clarity. And in the hands of your enemies, that ambiguity becomes their weapon. To foresee is a rare gift. The intuitive introvert often sees what others miss, the shift in demeanor that signals betrayal, the subtle inconsistencies in speech that reveal a lie, the silent tension before an act of violence or cruelty. He knows when the storm is coming, and he can often describe its course in exact detail before a single drop falls. But knowing is not enough. Seeing what's coming does not shield you from its impact if you fail to move. To see and not strike is not power. It is paralysis, and in the world of men, paralysis is punished. There is no reward for the man who watches the knife being drawn, but refuses to reach for his own. Insight without action is a slow death. You become a prophet of your own demise. You watch the collapse before it happens. You sense the betrayal and still let it unfold. You imagine every possible outcome, yet you remain unmoved, waiting for a moment of perfect clarity that never arrives. The game is not won by the one who sees the farthest. It is won by the one who moves with precision at the right time, even if the view ahead is still unclear. Intuition is a powerful compass, but it must drive decisions, not delay them. Too often, the sensitive and intelligent hesitate. They want certainty. They want all the pieces to make sense before they act. They imagine themselves as wise for waiting, for observing, for analyzing. But in war, hesitation is not seen as wisdom. It is seen as weakness. The more perceptive you are, the faster you must act when your perception becomes clear. Thought must become movement. Awareness must become aggression. Otherwise, you are merely a spectator with a front row seat to your own defeat. The intuitive introvert may think he is being strategic by not responding. He believes he is conserving energy, gathering information, letting others reveal themselves. This is true, but only if it ends in action. The man who gathers information and does nothing with it is not a strategist. He is a coward hiding behind intellect. He sees the traps but never lays his own. He detects manipulation but never turns it back on the manipulator. He becomes morally satisfied by his insight, but practically useless in the outcome. The world does not reward awareness alone. It rewards those who bend awareness into advantage. Enemies love men who see and do nothing. They fear the impulsive less than they fear the calculated. But a calculated man who never acts is no threat at all. If you see through deception and do not confront it, you teach the deceiver that you are safe to exploit. If you sense disloyalty and do not cut it out, you teach the traitor that you lack the stomach to lead. Foreseeing danger does not absolve you from eliminating it. There is no honor in watching the fire spread just because you saw the smoke before everyone else. There is only ruin. Action must follow perception like the blade follows the hand. There must be a moment where the thought becomes force, where what is sensed becomes something shaped. Those who act without thinking are fools, but those who only think are victims in the making. You are not meant to merely understand the world. You are meant to impose yourself upon it. And if your foresight does not lead to preemptive strikes, then it is not foresight at all. It is anxiety dressed in intelligence. It is cowardice wearing the mask of contemplation. The world belongs to those who move. It is reshaped by those who understand the future and step into it with force, before others even see it coming. Your insight is only as valuable as your willingness to risk for it. If you know what's coming and still let it arrive unchecked, you are not wise. You are complicit. The passive visionary is the most tragic figure in the hierarchy of men. He sees further than the rest. He understands the motives behind every move, the cracks in every alliance, the eventual decline hidden beneath temporary success. His mind moves swiftly, cutting through falsehood, illusion, and vanity. He recognizes truth not just in ideas, but in people. And yet, for all his clarity, he hesitates. He dreams of a better world, but he fails to dominate the one he is in. His vision becomes a burden instead of a weapon. He drowns in the very insight that should have made him dangerous. To see too much and do too little is to live under a curse. You carry the weight of foresight, but lack the spine of action. You feel superior to others, and maybe you are intellectually, but superiority that does not assert itself becomes self-sabotage. The passive visionary becomes isolated, not because he is misunderstood, but because he refuses to engage on the level the world demands. He wants the world to meet him on higher ground, but the world drags everyone through the mud. Those who survive are not those who imagine purity, but those who learn to fight dirty when required. The world is not kind to the contemplative idealist. It does not care how accurate your predictions are if you are too refined to impose them. Your perception is not feared. Your dreams are not respected. They are seen as indulgences of the weak. You will be praised for your wisdom, maybe even admired from a distance, but never followed, because in a crisis, people do not follow the one who merely understands. They follow the one who acts. The one who raises his voice, draws the line, and moves without waiting for approval. The visionary who cannot command becomes a prophet without power. Men who shape the world are not always the ones who understand it best. They are the ones who seize it. While the intuitive introvert measures every possible consequence, others have already taken control. While he refines his strategy, someone more reckless has already imposed his will. While he prepares for the perfect moment, the moment passes. And what he imagined he could build now belongs to someone else. Someone less thoughtful, less sensitive, but more willing to get blood on his hands. In the end, history remembers the conqueror, not the silent observer who saw it all coming. Idealism becomes a sickness when it prevents decisive action. The passive visionary often convinces himself that he is being patient, principled, or morally superior. But often he is merely afraid of confrontation, afraid of getting it wrong, afraid of stepping forward and being exposed. So he sits in the shadows, crafting theories, building elaborate mental structures, watching lesser men take positions of influence and wondering why no one recognizes his brilliance. What he fails to see is that the world is not built on brilliance. It is built on boldness. Power does not wait for your perfection. There is a price for refusing to act. The world extracts it mercilessly. It turns your insight into torment. You see others manipulating, lying, stealing, winning, and you know exactly how and why, but you do nothing. And the more you do nothing, the more bitter you become. You turn inward, judging others and yourself, constructing a personal narrative of superiority that hides the deep shame of inaction. You may even begin to despise those who act, not because they are wrong, but because they had the courage you did not. And so, your vision becomes a prison, a window into a world you will never touch. You must understand that to survive, vision is not enough. You must be willing to fight for it, bleed for it, enforce it. A dream without the will to protect it is a hallucination. And in a world ruled by force, hallucinations are torn apart by those who move without mercy. The passive visionary, if he does not awaken, is destined to be ruled by those he could have destroyed. The world does not reward the one who sees, it rewards the one who moves. Intuitive introverts possess rare gifts: depth, foresight, sensitivity, and the power to read beneath the surface of things. But without discipline, without strategy, without the courage to act upon their knowledge, these gifts rot into burdens. Sensitivity becomes a trap, silence becomes a void, foresight becomes paralysis, and vision becomes delusion. You were not born to merely observe the game. You were meant to influence it, to dominate it, to win it. If you do not learn to strike, to impose, to protect what is yours with ruthless clarity, the world will write your story for you. And it will not be a story of greatness. It will be a cautionary tale.